I used to think love was a simple equation. You give, you get. Turns out, in my family, it was more like a rigged game where the house always wins, and I was never the house. My name is Emily, and I grew up in a small town where everyone knew everyone else's business. Everyone thought my parents, Linda and Richard, were the definition of solid. Hardworking, church-going, smiling in all the Christmas photos. Behind closed doors, though, it was a different story. Nathan, my younger brother, could do no wrong. He forgot chores. Boys will be boys. Failed a class. He's finding his path. Meanwhile, if I came home with anything less than an A+, it was lectures about responsibility and disappointment over dinner that tasted like ash in my mouth. By the time I was 12, I had figured it out. Nathan was the golden child. I was just extra. But I still tried. God, I tried. I built myself into the daughter any parents should have been proud of. Straight A's, scholarships, a degree in engineering, a stable job, a life that wasn't waiting for someone else to rescue me. Nathan? He drifted, retail jobs, band gigs. Half-finished ideas that never paid the rent. Yet somehow he stayed on a pedestal I could never reach. The sad part is, I didn't even realize how deep the favoritism ran until it was too late. Until loyalty turned into chains. But that revelation would come later. For now, I was still the fool chasing approval that would never come. It started small. A couple $100 here. A new water heater there. Groceries when Dad's hours got cut. I didn't think twice. That's what family does, right? Nathan, of course, was still living at home, still figuring things out, as Mum would say, with that tight little smile that never quite reached her eyes. He'd float from one dead-end job to another, and every time he crashed, they padded the fall, paid his car repairs, covered his rent, bought him the latest gadgets. Meanwhile, I was the one wiring the money for repairs they forgot to mention to the neighbours. Emily, Mum would say over the phone, "You're so independent. We're so proud of you. You don't need us the way Nathan does." Funny how pride sounds a lot like abandonment when you really listen. I told myself it was fine. I had a good salary. I didn't need fancy vacations or a brand new car. If helping them gave me some invisible, unspoken worth, maybe that was enough. Years passed like that. Me paying quietly, then praising Nathan loudly. Birthdays came and went. Nathan getting expensive gifts. Me getting polite cards and a cake if someone remembered. Whenever I dared to ask, even gently, why there was always a difference, Mum's voice would harden. "You don't understand, Emily. He needs more help than you ever did. Maybe I didn't understand back then. Maybe I just didn't want to." I kept telling myself loyalty was its own reward. Turns out, loyalty is just a noose you tie around your own neck and hand them the other end. It happened on an ordinary Saturday. The kind of day you don't remember until it becomes the day you remember forever. I had driven across town to help Mum and Dad Linda and Richard with some paperwork they said they couldn't figure out. Nathan, predictably, was nowhere to be found, too busy sleeping off another tough week of gaming and half-hearted job applications. The kitchen smelled faintly of burned coffee and lemon disinfectant. Stacks of old bills, mortgage documents, and insurance papers covered the table. Mum fluttered around, digging through drawers, complaining about missing pens and misplaced files. I settled in, slipping into the familiar role I'd learned to wear like armour, the responsible one, the fixer, the daughter who didn't need anything, but was always expected to give everything. Somewhere between sorting tax forms and digging through bank statements, Mum's phone rang. She muttered something about just a minute and left the room. Phone pressed to her ear. That's when I saw it. A plain manila folder half buried under a pile of junk mail, No label, no warning, just there. I wasn't looking for anything. I wasn't snooping. I swear to whatever God still cared, I wasn't. But my eyes caught a glimpse of something that made my stomach tighten, the word will. Before I could talk myself out of it, my fingers moved. I opened the folder. At first, it didn't register. Legal language blurred together hereby, bequeath, executor, beneficiary, until my brain finally clicked into place and processed what I was seeing. Nathan's name, Nathan's name, Nathan's name, not mine. The house, the savings, the personal belongings, every last scrap of their legacy neatly assigned to my brother. And me? Like I had never even existed. I didn't even realize Mum had come back until she spoke, her voice light, almost amused. "Oh, that," she said, waving a hand like it was a grocery list I'd stumbled across. We just figured it made the most sense. My mouth went dry. I stared at her, begging for an explanation that made any kind of sense. None came. "You have a good career, Emily," she said, voice dripping with rationality, like she was the one being reasonable and I was a hysterical child. "You don't need it. Nathan, he's had a harder time. He'll need the support. Harder time." I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream. Harder time. The boy who'd been coddled from birth, who couldn't hold a job longer than a season, who lived rent-free under their roof at 30. I had built everything I had from the ground up. I had sacrificed weekends, vacations, relationships, poured my energy into a career so stable they bragged about me at church, even while pretending to the neighbours that Nathan was between opportunities. And now, after all the money I had given, after all the times I had picked up their bills without question, after all the years I had been their invisible safety net, they decided I didn't matter enough to even warrant a line in their will. "You'll be fine, Emily," Mum said again, her voice soft, almost pitying. Pity. That was the final insult. I swallowed the lump in my throat, fighting the sting of tears that I refused to let fall. I said nothing. I just stood there, heart pounding, world tilting, understanding finally sliding into place like a blade between my ribs. This wasn't about need. This was about value. In their eyes, I had never been their equal. I had been their worker bee, their unpaid insurance policy, their plan B. I must have looked strange, frozen, silent, because Mom tilted her head, frowning slightly. "Don't be upset," she said, like she was comforting a toddler who had dropped their ice cream. Something inside me cracked then. Not a dramatic shatter, no explosion, just a small, decisive snap, like the final thread in a fraying rope. I closed the folder, placed it neatly back on the table, and smiled. Not the smile they were used to, not the nice, eager-to-please-daughter smile. A colder one. "Of course," I said. My voice sounded steady even though my hands were shaking slightly. "It makes perfect sense." Mum's face relaxed. Relief flickered across her features too fast, too careless. I stayed for another half hour, finishing the paperwork mechanically, answering their small talk with polite nods and hollow laughter. I hugged them goodbye like I had 1,000 times before. And then I walked out of that house and drove home with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. I was done. Done giving, done explaining, done bleeding for people who would step over my body if it meant Nathan could have a softer landing. They made their choice. Now it was my turn to make mine. The silence came first. At first I thought maybe they hadn't even noticed. Maybe Linda and Richard know, Mum and Dad, though those words tasted sour now thought I was just busy. A week passed, then 2, no calls, no texts, no frantic messages about the rent, the roof, the bills that always seemed to arrive like clockwork, And I let it happen. I watched the clock tick and the calendar flip, and I waited. The first message came on a Thursday night, 3 weeks after I closed that folder and closed the door on the version of myself who thought loyalty would save me. No greeting, no pleasantries. Just a single text from Mum, rent's due, need you to transfer by tomorrow, as if nothing had changed, as if they could carve me out of their future and still expect me to bankroll their present. I stared at the message, the words swimming on the screen, my heart pounding in my ears. For a moment, old habits flared the need to fix it, to smooth it over, to keep the machine running even if it ran me into the ground. But then I remembered the will. I remembered the absence of my name. I remembered the hollow, patronizing smile Mom gave me when she said I didn't need it. And I realized something. They didn't need me either. I didn't yell. I didn't explain. I didn't beg them to see how wrong it was. I simply typed back, I'm sure Nathan will handle it. And I hit send. I put the phone down like it weighed 1,000 pounds. For the first time in years, I felt free. The fallout was immediate. The phone started buzzing within minutes, Mum calling, then Dad, back to back. Over and over, as if sheer persistence could force me to pick up and fall back into line, I didn't answer. I sat in my living room, the glow of the unanswered calls lighting up the dark, and felt nothing but the steady drumbeat of my own breathing. Later that night, I checked my voicemail out of morbid curiosity. Mum's voice, brittle with outrage and disappointment. Emily, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this is really selfish. Your father and I have always done our best for you. Is this really the daughter you want to be turning your back on us when we need you? Nathan can't help right now. He's struggling. The word grated against my skin like sandpaper. Nathan wasn't struggling. Nathan was coasting. Nathan was living a life where consequences never stuck because people like me were always there to catch him before he hit the ground. Not anymore. The next day, another text. This time from Nathan himself. Seriously, Emily, just pay it like you always do. Stop being difficult. No apology. No acknowledgement of everything I had carried for them over the years. Just entitlement. Just expectation. I didn't answer. Hours later, WTF is wrong with you? You can literally afford it. Still no understanding. Still no humility. The only thing louder than their demands was their assumption that my life, my money, my existence existed to serve theirs. The phone kept buzzing. The guilt kept piling up. And yet, for the first time, it felt like it was piling up outside of me, unable to breach the walls I had finally started building. I expected Mum and Dad to escalate, and they did. The following morning, a new message popped up, this time from Chloe, my mum's sister. Aunt Chloe had always been on the periphery, distant but kind when it mattered. Her text was simple. Hey, sweetie, just heard from your mum. She says you're refusing to help them and they might lose the house. What's going on? I thought you guys were close. I stared at the message, my chest tightening not with guilt, but with a grim, exhausted sort of understanding. The flying monkeys had arrived. I could have explained everything. I could have poured out the years of favoritism, the money drained from my pockets, the way I had been cut out like a tumour the moment it became convenient. But I didn't. Instead, I texted back, hey Aunt Chloe, appreciate you checking in. Maybe ask Mom why she left me out of the will while still expecting me to pay the bills. Let me know what she says. Silence stretched between us. Long minutes passed. Then, finally, 3 dots flickered on my screen, typing before disappearing again. No reply. I smiled to myself. A small, sharp thing that tasted more like survival than satisfaction. The family secret, the pretty illusion that everything was fine, was cracking open. And not because I shouted, not because I fought, because I simply refused to play anymore. The next few days were a blur of frantic messages, passive-aggressive texts, and tearful voicemails. Mum accusing me of betrayal, Dad pleading with me to be reasonable, Nathan demanding I do the right thing. But the longer I stayed silent, the louder they got and the less it mattered. I wasn't their scapegoat anymore. I wasn't their financial plan. I wasn't their silent, smiling backup dancer in the Nathan show. I was done. And in that silence they couldn't breach, I found something I had never realized I was missing. Peace. It didn't take long for things to escalate. I should have known they wouldn't let it end quietly. I wasn't naive enough to think that Linda and Richard or Nathan, especially, would accept my silence with grace. They came to my door 3 days later. The knock was heavy, not the polite kind, the desperate kind, the kind that said, "We don't plan on leaving until you give us what we want." Through the peephole, I saw all three of them. Mum's mouth tight, Dad looking uncomfortable behind her, and Nathan arms crossed, smirking like he was already planning his victory speech. For a second, I thought about not answering. Let them stew on the porch, let the neighbours wonder, but then something colder settled into me, a kind of stillness I hadn't felt before. I opened the door. "Emily, we need to talk," Mum said immediately, pushing past the boundary of my doorway with nothing more than her presence. I leaned casually against the frame. "No," I said, "you need to listen." She blinked, thrown off. Dad cleared his throat, his hands twitching at his sides. "You're being childish," Mum snapped, regaining her footing. "Childish," the first repeated, voice flat. "For finally treating myself with the same indifference you showed me." Nathan rolled his eyes. "God, you're so dramatic. Just pay the rent and stop making a scene." I turned to him, a slow, measured movement. "You live there too, Nathan," I said. "Maybe it's time you pulled your weight." He flushed, his smirk flickering into something meaner, uglier. Mom stepped forward, her voice low and biting. "We raised you, Emily. We gave you everything. The least you could do is show some respect." I almost laughed. Respect? Was cutting me out of their will respectful? Was treating my sacrifices like obligations respectful? "You chose Nathan," I said, my voice calm, cold. "You made it clear who mattered. Now live with it." Dad finally spoke, his voice weak. "Emily, we thought you'd understand. You're strong. He's not." "I am strong," I agreed. "Stronger than you ever realized. Strong enough to walk away." The silence that followed was thick, suffocating. "You're turning your back on your family?" Mum hissed. "No," I said. "You turned your back on me first." I started to close the door, but Nathan shoved his foot in the gap. "This isn't over," he snarled. "You'll regret this." I met his glare with something that felt dangerously close to pity. "I already regret staying as long as I did." I pushed the door shut, the soft click sounding louder than any argument we could have had. Outside, I could hear Mom raising her voice, Dad muttering useless placations, Nathan kicking the bottom step as they stormed away. But inside it was quiet. A week passed, then another. The messages slowed, the calls stopped. For the first time, I tasted what it felt like to not be needed, not as an ATM, not as a scapegoat, not as the responsible daughter who fixed everything. And I realized I didn't miss them. Life moved forward. I redecorated my apartment. I booked a vacation I'd put off for years. I said yes to invitations I would have turned down before because I was too exhausted from carrying burdens that were never mine. One afternoon, while shopping downtown, I saw Dad. He looked older, smaller somehow, carrying a bag of discount groceries, driving a beat-up car that coughed smoke as he pulled away. He didn't see me, and I didn't call out to him. I could have. Once I would have. But that version of Emily was gone. Weeks turned into months. I stopped checking my phone for their names, stopped rehearsing conversations that would never happen. A part of me, the small, bruised part, still wondered if they understood, if they ever looked around the collapsing walls of their life and realised why I wasn't there to hold them up anymore. But I knew better than to wait for that apology. Some people don't learn lessons. They just look for new scapegoats. Then, one evening, I found a letter taped to my door. No postage, no return address. Just my name, scribbled in my mother's familiar, angry handwriting. I opened it. You are throwing away your family over nothing. Nathan is struggling. We needed you. We still need you. Come to your senses before it's too late. No apology, no accountability. Just more demands disguised as guilt. I folded the letter neatly, walked to the trash can, and dropped it in without ceremony. It was never about love. It was never about family. It was about control. And now they had none left. 1 year later, I sat on the porch of my new home, small, cozy, mine. The sun dipped low, setting the town in gold. I thought about Linda and Richard sometimes. I thought about Nathan. I wondered if they missed me. I wondered if they still blamed me for the consequences of their own choices. And then I smiled, sipped my coffee, and let the thought drift away like smoke in the breeze. I had chosen myself. And for once, that was enough. Story 2. For years, my nickname in the family was the bank, but trust me, there was nothing funny about it. I'm Sam, 34 years old, and for half a decade, I financially carried my younger brother, Ryan, covered his rent, paid his utilities, threw in grocery money when he was struggling. It started after his wife left him no real shock there. Ryan's temper could fill a room faster than smoke. Honestly, I didn't blame her for running. But he was still my brother, and when our parents shrugged and said they were enjoying their retirement, the responsibility landed squarely on my shoulders. I work a regular job auto mechanic, decent but not extravagant. I get maybe one good vacation a year if I save hard enough. Helping Ryan wasn't easy, but I kept telling myself, if not me, who? I bought his daughter, Chloe, school supplies when she started kindergarten, paid for her birthday parties, chipped in for soccer uniforms. Last Christmas, the first splurged and bought her the tablet she needed for school, even though it meant skipping out on things I actually needed for my own place. And I swallowed the resentment, told myself that family is supposed to step up. For a while, Ryan seemed genuinely grateful. But then last year, he landed a solid job tech support at a software firm, full benefits, real salary. I figured I'd keep helping for a few more months, just until he got a better grip on things. But that's not what happened. Instead, Ryan started showing up to family dinners, bragging about his new gaming setup, $300 sneakers, and weekend trips with friends. It stung, but I kept my mouth shut. Let him live a little, I thought. He's been through enough. Until last Sunday, we were all at Mom and Dad's place, me, Ryan, Chloe, the parents, and my Uncle Jeff. Ryan casually mentioned that he was thinking about buying a brand new custom motorcycle. Price tag? Around $15,000. I looked up from my plate. Calmly, I asked, "You're planning to buy a new bike while I'm still covering half your bills?" Ryan laughed like I was the one being ridiculous. Then he said, "Come on, Sam, don't be cheap. Cheap." That single word hit harder than any punch he could have thrown. Cheap. After years of cutting back on my own needs to support him, I sat there for a moment, letting the silence settle around the table. Mum and Dad suddenly became fascinated with their mashed potatoes. Ryan smirked. Uncle Jeff shifted uncomfortably in his chair. I pushed my plate aside. "Let's talk about cheap," I said, voice low but steady. "Let's talk about how I've been paying your rent while you save up for a $15,000 story. About how Mom and Dad refuse to lift a finger because they're too busy sipping wine on cruises, and I'm the idiot picking up the pieces. Well, guess what? I'm done." Dead silence. No more rent. No more groceries. No more safety net. "You're on your own now, Ryan." I stood up, grabbed my jacket and headed toward the door. Before leaving, I turned back. "And Chloe? She's your responsibility." "Not mine. I love her, but she's your daughter." As I walked out, Uncle Jeff caught up with me. He clapped me on the back and muttered, "About damn time someone said it." His support meant the world in that moment, but it didn't erase the years of sacrifice or the anger burning in my chest. And deep down, I knew this was only the beginning. The first few days after that dinner were strangely quiet. No calls, no texts, no angry voicemails from Ryan demanding help. Nothing. It was almost eerie, like the calm before a storm. And in a weird way, that silence stung even more than if he had blown up at me. After everything I'd done, I guess I expected something, but nope, just radio silence. Then, about a week later, there was a knock on my door around 9 p.m. I already knew who it was before I even opened it. Mum and Dad, both standing there with tight faces like they'd just rehearsed a speech in the car. I stepped aside and let them in without a word. Mum wasted no time. "We need to talk about Ryan," she said sharply, walking straight into my kitchen like she owned the place. Dad, a step behind, added, "And Chloe. She's suffering, Sam." I leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "Is she? Or are you just uncomfortable now that you actually have to get involved?" That didn't go over well. Mum's mouth tightened. Dad sighed heavily, the way he does when he's about to start a guilt trip. "You can't just abandon your family," Mum snapped. Ryan's struggling. "Chloe didn't ask for any of this." I almost laughed. "Almost? You know what's funny?" I said. "You two have been enjoying retirement for years, wine tastings, river cruises, fancy dinners. But now that I decided to stop paying for Ryan's life, suddenly it's a crisis." "That's not fair," Mum hissed. "No," I said, voice calm. "It's not fair, but not for the reasons you think." Dad shifted awkwardly. "You're still young. You can bounce back." "Right. Because being 34 and barely scraping by, thanks to your son's bad decisions, makes me the perfect candidate to just bounce back," I said, shaking my head. The conversation spiraled from there. Same old speeches about family loyalty, about how Chloe was innocent, about how I was being selfish. At some point, I held up a hand to stop the endless cycle. If you care so much, you start paying his rent, you buy the groceries, you bail him out. Mum's face flushed. "We're not enablers, Sam. He needs to learn responsibility." "Exactly," I said quietly. "And he's never going to learn if I keep fixing everything for him." That pretty much ended it. I walked them to the door. They left, still muttering under their breath about how cold-hearted I'd become. And for a minute I actually wondered, was I being cold? But no, I was just tired. Tired of being used. Tired of being the only adult in the room. The real fallout: 2 days later, Ryan finally called me. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity got the better of me. His voice was weirdly cheerful. That alone set my alarms off. "Hey, Sam," he said, like we were best buddies catching up after a long trip. "Just wanted to let you know I'm moving out of the apartment next month." I frowned. "Because you can't afford it." "Nope," he said, smug as hell. "Found a better situation. Better situation." I should have hung up right then and there, but like an idiot, I asked, "Where are you moving?" He paused for dramatic effect. I could picture the smirk on his face. "Back in with Mom and Dad." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. "You're kidding." "Nope. They said it's the best thing for Chloe. You know, stable environment, help with school, all that." I leaned against the wall, trying to keep my temper in check. I shouldn't have been surprised. Of course Mum and Dad bailed him out. Why should they change now? But Ryan wasn't done twisting the knife. "Oh, and one more thing," he said, voice dripping with fake sweetness. "You might want to check your credit report. Just a heads up." My stomach dropped. "What the hell did you do, Ryan?" I demanded. He just laughed. "You'll find out. Bye." The line went dead. I didn't even take a second to breathe. I rushed to my laptop, pulled up my credit monitoring app, and my heart just about exploded out of my chest. There it was. A brand new credit card account opened in my name. Thousands of dollars charged. Designer clothes, electronics, airline tickets, even luxury hotel stays. And every single charge had happened within the past 6 months. Ryan had been stealing from me, quietly, sneakily, behind my back, using my social security number, my address, my name. This wasn't just family drama anymore. This was straight up identity theft. And the worst part? I didn't even feel shocked. The shift after the initial wave of fury crashed over me. I sat there numb. I thought about Chloe, about the birthday parties, the school supplies, the way Ryan would call me bro and thank me for helping him get back on his feet. It was all a lie. He never intended to stand on his own. He just found a new way to drain me dry. I knew I needed help, real help. So I called Uncle Jeff. He listened quietly while I laid it all out: the stolen identity, the fake credit card, the moving back home stunt. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. "Kid," he said, "this is way past family drama. This is criminal." "I know," I said, voice hollow. "What are you gonna do?" I didn't have an answer. If I pressed charges, Chloe would get caught in the crossfire. She was the only innocent person in this mess. But if I didn't press charges, Ryan would get away with it. And he'd just do it again, to me or to someone else. Uncle Jeff was quiet for a minute. Then he said something that stuck with me. "You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved, Sam. Sometimes the best thing you can do is let them fall." That night I barely slept. But when the sun came up, I knew exactly what I had to do. First thing the next morning, I called a lawyer. I wasn't playing around anymore. I needed to know exactly what my rights were and what my options looked like. The lawyer, a calm older guy named Mr. Parker, didn't sugarcoat it. "What your brother did is identity theft," he said bluntly. "You have enough evidence to press charges if you want to." Hearing it out loud made my stomach twist. Press charges against my own brother. I must have hesitated too long because Mr. Parker leaned forward and added, "Sometimes the people closest to us do the most damage. You're not wrong for wanting to protect yourself." He wasn't wrong. I had spent 5 years sacrificing for Ryan, and this was how he repaid me. Still, Mr. Parker suggested trying to negotiate first. Sometimes the threat of legal action was enough to make people take things seriously. So that night, against every better instinct I had, I called Ryan. He picked up on the second ring. "Yo, Sam," he said, way too cheerful for someone who should be worried. "What's up? No games, Ryan?" I said, voice flat. "I know about the credit cards." There was a long pause, then a laugh. Nervous. Fake. Man, I don't know what you're talking about, Save It. I cut him off. I've already reported the fraud. I've already talked to a lawyer. You used my name to open accounts and rack up thousands in charges. Every transaction is tied directly back to you. Ryan went quiet. I pressed on. You have two choices. Pay every single penny back fast, or I press charges. And trust me, Ryan, once I file, there's no undoing it. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. For the first time, I think it actually hit him that he wasn't going to be able to weasel out of this one. Finally, he said, voice low and panicked. Come on, Sam. Don't do this. Think about Chloe. I am thinking about Chloe, I snapped. She deserves a dad who's not a lying, stealing leech. Fix this or I will. I hung up without giving him a chance to respond. And for the first time in a long time, I felt calm. Payback the quiet kind a week passed. I didn't hear a word from Ryan. Then one morning, I got a notification from my credit monitoring app. I logged in, heart pounding, and there it was. The fraudulent accounts had been paid off in full. At first, I felt a wave of relief, but it didn't take long for the full picture to come into focus. Ryan hadn't magically come into a pile of cash overnight. Mum and Dad bailed him out. They pulled money from their precious vacation fund, the one they'd been saving for a winter trip to Cancun, to cover Ryan's mess. I found out because Mum called me, furious. You happy now? She screeched the second I picked up. You've ruined everything. We had to cancel our trip because of you. I closed my eyes and took a slow breath. Let me get this straight, I said. I ruined everything, not Ryan, who committed identity theft. Not you two, who enabled him for years. Somehow, it's still my fault. You didn't have to threaten him with jail, she yelled. I wouldn't have had to threaten him at all if he hadn't stolen from me, I said, my voice steady. You want to be mad? Fine. But point that anger where it belongs. There was a beat of silence. Then she said coldly, You're not the son we thought you were, and for the first time I didn't flinch. Good, I said, because I'm finally the man I should have been all along. I hung up. And I didn't feel bad about it. The fallout after that, family gatherings turned into a nightmare. Thanksgiving? Ryan sat there sulking like a teenager, refusing to look me in the eye. Mum made loud, passive-aggressive comments about people who think they're better than their own family. Dad barely spoke. I could have stayed away, but I went for Chloe. Only for Chloe. And honestly, even she could tell something was off. She wasn't her usual bubbly self. She clung to me whenever I was around, like she was afraid I'd disappear too. One night, about a month later, Chloe called me. She was whispering like she was scared someone would overhear. Uncle Sam, she said, voice trembling. Are you mad at me? That shattered something inside me. No, sweetheart, I said immediately. I could never be mad at you. But Mum says you don't want to help us anymore, she sniffled. I sat down heavily on the couch, heartbreaking. Listen to me, Chloe, I said gently. You didn't do anything wrong. I love you, and I'll always be here for you. Okay? Always. Okay, she whispered. We talked for a while after that about school, about her soccer team, about her favourite books. I promised I'd come to her next game, and I meant it. Because no matter how bad things got with Ryan and my parents, Chloe was innocent. She deserved at least one adult who wouldn't let her down. The final breaking point, a few weeks later, Chloe's school put on a winter concert. She was in the front row, singing her heart out. When she spotted me in the audience, she waved so hard I thought her arm might fall off. Afterward, while everyone gathered in the gym for cookies and cocoa, I handed Chloe a small bouquet of flowers. She beamed. pure joy. And then Ryan showed up. He took one look at the flowers, sneered, and said loudly enough for nearby parents to hear, "Wow, Sam. Throwing money around now, huh? Guess it's easier when you're not busy suing your family." I turned to him slowly. "Not the time, Ryan," I said quietly. He didn't stop. He just kept pushing, baiting me. "You're a real piece of work, man. Chloe deserves better than a bitter old man trying to buy her love." That was it. I crouched down so I was eye level with Chloe and said, loud enough for Ryan to hear, "Never let anyone guilt you for standing up for yourself. Okay? Even if they're family." Chloe nodded solemnly. I stood, gave Ryan one long, hard look and walked away, left him standing there stewing in his own bitterness, and for the first time I didn't feel the need to explain myself to anyone. Aftermath, it wasn't clean. It wasn't easy. Family drama rarely is. Mom and Dad doubled down, blaming me for dividing the family. Ryan spun his own little sob story about how he was just trying to survive and I abandoned him. But I didn't care anymore. I stopped answering their guilt-tripping calls, stopped showing up at dinners where I wasn't wanted. Instead, I focused on Chloe. Whenever she needed help with homework or just wanted to hang out, I was there. No drama, no strings. Just someone she could count on. Uncle Jeff stayed in my corner too, quietly supporting me the whole way. Some people, I learned, don't need to share blood to feel like real family. And as for me, I finally started living my own life. No more draining my bank account for people who didn't appreciate it. No more letting guilt chains hold me hostage. No more letting other people define what family means. Family isn't just blood. Family is who shows up. Family is who doesn't need a loan to love you. The last word a few months ago, Chloe gave me a handmade card. On the front, she had drawn a big messy heart with our names inside it. Inside, in her wobbly handwriting, it said, "Thank you for always believing in me. You make me feel strong." I read it once, then twice, and for the first time in a long, long time, I felt strong too. Story 3. When people ask about my childhood, I usually just laugh and say, "It's complicated. The truth. It wasn't terrible. I had food, a bed, a roof, but I wouldn't call it happy either." My name's Rachel. I'm 36 now, and this is not a cry for sympathy. I'm sharing because maybe someone out there needs to hear that walking away is an option. It all started when I was 8. My little sister, Emily, was born way too early. I still remember my dad bursting into my room at 2 a.m, shaking me awake, telling me they had to rush to the hospital. My Aunt Lisa came over to stay with me that night. Everyone was tense, holding their breath, and even though I was just a kid, I understood one thing: something was wrong. Emily survived, but she was fragile. Our house practically turned into a sterile ward overnight. The smell of disinfectant burned into my memory. Every time I sneezed, Mum would panic. "Rachel, was that a cough? You can't stay here if you're sick. Pack a bag, you're going to Grandma's." At first, it felt like a mini adventure. Sleepovers at Grandma's house, extra cookies from Aunt Lisa. But pretty soon, it became clear I was being shuffled away, like I was a threat, like I didn't belong. So, like any kid desperate for approval, I worked my butt off. Straight A's, student council, debate team captain. I even won a statewide science fair when I was 13. And you know what Mum said? "That's nice, honey, but did you wash your hands?" Emily's feeling a little sniffly. No hug, no framed certificate, just a casual dismissal and a reminder that Emily was the sun and the rest of us were orbiting planets. By the time Emily hit 7, she was healthy, strong even. But my parents never really updated their software. Still treated her like glass. Worse, Emily knew it. If she wanted something, she just had to pout or sniffle dramatically, and boom, front row tickets to whatever she wanted. High school was supposed to be my time. I kept my grades pristine, loaded my schedule with extracurriculars, even made it to the state debate championship, but none of it mattered. I remember sitting in the counselor's office one night, glowing because my teacher had just told my parents I was on track for a full academic scholarship. Then Mum's phone buzzed. It was Emily. She was crying because she couldn't find the good pen for her homework. The one I gave her was bad luck. Within minutes, my parents were gone. No congratulations, no hugs, just a rushed apology and the click of the door as they left to fix her crisis. I stopped inviting them to anything after that. It just hurt too much. When I finally landed a full ride to Midwest State University, I was buzzing with pride. When I told my parents over dinner, Emily rolled her eyes and said, "Finally, I'm turning your room into my art studio. I need better lighting for my live streams. No, we're proud of you, no cake, no party. Just a countdown until they could repurpose my life into her backdrop." I counted the days until I moved out. College was a revelation. Freedom tasted like cheap coffee and thin dorm mattresses, but it was mine. I barely went home unless I had to. Family dinners felt like walking into a sitcom where I was the forgotten character in the background. Still at that little job, Rach. Mum would ask distractedly while refilling Emily's wine glass. Yep, I'd say, smiling tightly. What I didn't say, that little job was just my front. Because during college, in the dead hours between classes and night shifts, I'd started teaching myself about investing. At first, it was just curiosity YouTube videos, free webinars, nerdy subreddits. Then I took a real course, paid for it with my last $300 and ate ramen for a month. No regrets. Turns out I had a knack for it. I started small, $200 share, $100 steer, mostly tech stocks and startups no one was talking about yet. My first major win, a tiny AI firm I believed in. A $400 investment turned into $3,000 almost overnight. By 25, I was making more from investments than from my corporate job. By 27, I could have quit working altogether, but I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I played the part, showed up at family dinners, let them think I was scraping by, listened to endless conversations about Emily's private university drama, her designer bag envy, her roommates' yacht trips. Meanwhile, my portfolio kept growing quietly in the background. One Saturday, everything shifted. I came home for dinner and caught Mom crying over a stack of bills. Dad hunched over his laptop, muttering about tuition and property taxes. And Emily? Picking at her pasta, complaining her new classmates had Teslas and Prada backpacks while she still had to gasp take the bus sometimes. Something in me cracked. Despite everything, they were still my parents. That night, I set up an automatic monthly transfer of $5,000 to their bank account. No explanation, no conditions. When Mom found out, she hugged me harder than she had since Emily was born. For a moment, I let myself believe maybe this would change things. Maybe they'd see me differently now. But that illusion shattered fast, because a week later I overheard them whispering in the kitchen. We should use some of Rachel's money to get Emily a designer handbag, Mum said brightly. At least $1,200, Dad agreed. Poor thing feels so out of place. They didn't even pause to think. They didn't ask if I was okay. They didn't wonder if I needed anything. They just saw me as an ATM. A silent benefactor funding Emily's dream life. That was the moment the scales fell from my eyes. I wasn't their daughter. I was their safety net, their backup plan, their silent, invisible workhorse. And the worst part, they didn't even realize they were doing it. They loved Emily the way you're supposed to love a child, with pride, indulgence, unwavering support. Me? I was useful, nothing more. At 29, I decided it was time to stop renting and finally buy a place. A gorgeous apartment downtown, spacious, secure, close enough to the city, but quiet enough to breathe. And I didn't need a loan. I wired the full payment from my investments. No mortgage, no debt, just keys and freedom. When I casually mentioned I was moving at dinner, Mum barely blinked. "Make sure you don't overspend on rent, sweetie. You never know how long that job of yours will last." I smiled. I didn't correct her. Why bother? She didn't know I hadn't had a job in almost 2 years. She didn't know I was quietly managing a portfolio worth millions. She didn't know anything. And honestly, for once, I liked it that way. Life settled into a new rhythm after that. I'd wake up in my sunny apartment, check my investments, sip my coffee, maybe make a few trades before most people even started their day. Meanwhile, my family still thought I was grinding away at some random mid-level job, probably stressing over rent. I let them think that. It was easier than the alternative. Saturday dinners were still a thing, Mum insisted. I'd show up with a bottle of wine, sit through 2 hours of Emily's latest struggles, and leave with a headache. Emily had graduated from her private university by then, but reality was hitting her like a brick wall. Turns out, employers didn't really care about your $200,000 degree if you couldn't back it up with actual skills. After a few rejections, she took a temporary manager position at a place Dad's college buddy pulled strings to get her into. She hated it. She'd come home, flop onto the couch, and rant about how she was meant for more, like the world just hadn't caught up to her genius yet. I tried giving practical advice, suggested she consider other cities, smaller companies, but she brushed me off every time. "You wouldn't understand," she said one afternoon, nose wrinkling like she'd smelled something bad. "You're content? I'm ambitious. I didn't even bother replying. What was the point?" Thanksgiving was creeping up, and Mum was in full panic mode. Every year, she insisted on doing everything herself, cooking for 20 people, like she was hosting a royal banquet, then collapsing in exhaustion halfway through dinner. This year, though, she threw her back out, pulling Emily's laundry from the dryer. Yes, grown adult Emily still lived at home, laundry and all. On the phone, Mum sounded defeated. "I don't know how I'm going to pull this off," she sighed. "Let me handle it," I offered. "I'll get it catered." "You just relax." There was a long pause, like she couldn't quite process that someone was offering to help without strings attached. Then her voice lit up. "You're such a good daughter, Rachel. I don't know what we'd do without you." In the background, I heard Emily scoff. Of course, no good deed goes unpunished. Thanksgiving Day arrived, and for once, everything was smooth. The food showed up on time. The turkey was moist. The sides were actually edible. I helped Mum set everything up while Emily floated around, making snarky comments about how store-bought stuffing doesn't have soul. Whatever. Let her grumble. Everyone else was too busy devouring their plates to care. Dinner was in full swing when Mom, never one to miss an opportunity to spotlight Emily, started gushing. "Emily's really been working so hard lately," she told the table, beaming. "Between her job and planning her future, she's just incredible. I don't know how she does it all." Aunt Lisa smiled at me and said, "And Rachel, this dinner's amazing. Must have cost a pretty penny." I shrugged. Happy to do it. Mum, never missing a beat, chimed in. "Oh, Rachel's been helping us a lot lately. With expenses too." The room went quiet for a second, everyone digesting that little nugget of information. Across the table, Emily's face twisted. At first, I thought it was just her usual jealousy kicking in, but then she stood up, practically knocking her chair over. "I think it's time we all saw what Rachel's really hiding," she announced, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. Before I could react, she disappeared down the hall. My stomach dropped. She'd gone into my old bedroom, where I'd set up my laptop earlier to monitor the Asian markets opening during dinner. She wouldn't, would she? 2 minutes later, Emily stormed back into the dining room, my laptop clutched in her hands like a trophy. "Since she's so generous, let's all take a look at her big secret," Emily said, flipping the screen around. My heart stopped, because there it was, my investment portfolio, still open, still logged in, and right at the top, clear as day, 10, 472, $315.86. Silence slammed down over the room like a lid. Forks froze midair. Aunt Lisa's mouth actually dropped open. Dad looked like he'd just seen a ghost. Emily's smug expression cracked in real time. Mum was the first to speak. $10 million? She whispered, like saying it too loud would make it disappear. Dad blinked rapidly. You're rich? I took a breath. No more hiding. I left my old job years ago, I said quietly. I invest full-time now. That's how I make my living. The disbelief on their faces would have been funny if it hadn't hurt so much. Emily sputtered, hands shaking. You let us struggle while you sat on millions. I stared at her, deadpan. I've been sending you $5,000 every month for 3 years. Mum's face turned an alarming shade of red. But we have bills. Emily has loans. You could have. What? I cut in. Paid off everything? Bought Emily a matching Prada backpack for her new friends? Is that it? Dad slammed his hand on the table. Family helps family, Rachel. That money belongs to all of us. I laughed sharp and bitter. No, Dad, it doesn't. You owe us. Mum shrieked. You wouldn't have gotten anywhere without us raising you. You mean Grandma raising me? I said coolly. Or Aunt Lisa. Or the babysitters you dumped me on every time Emily sneezed. The room cracked open. 20 years of resentment spilled out like floodwater. You always had Emily's back, I said, voice steady. Every achievement I ever had, dismissed, forgotten, because she needed all the attention. Well, guess what? I didn't crumble. I built something, quietly, without you. Emily burst into tears, loud, ugly, dramatic. Mum started ranting about ungrateful daughters and family betrayal. I didn't say another word. I grabbed my laptop. I walked out the door without looking back. Behind me, the shouting faded into the night air. The drive back to my apartment that night was weirdly calm. No tears, no shaking hands. Just a hollow sort of peace settling in my chest. My phone, though, a different story. It lit up non-stop. Calls from Mum, texts from Dad, voicemails from Emily, sobbing about how I ruined everything. I let it all go to voicemail. I already knew exactly what they'd say. Guilt trips, screaming, how could you do this to family? After everything we did for you, it was all so predictable. For a minute, I wondered if I should call them back. Explain, make them understand. But then I thought about every science fair they skipped, every debate championship they didn't come to, every birthday where Emily's drama swallowed my celebration whole. And I realized they didn't want to understand. They never had. They just wanted access. Access to my life, access to my money. Not because they loved me, because it was convenient. By the next morning, the whole family knew. Mum had taken to Facebook, posting a long, weepy message about betrayal and selfishness, and asking everyone to pray for our family during this heartbreaking time. She painted me like some kind of heartless millionaire who abandoned her struggling parents and poor, sweet Emily. The comments came fast and furious. How could she do that to you? Money changes people, She needs to remember where she came from. Funny how none of these people were at my graduations. Funny how none of them asked where I was when Emily got a new car for her 16th birthday, and I got nothing. Aunt Lisa, bless her, texted me privately. "Ignore them," she wrote. "The people who matter know the truth." It helped, a little, but it didn't stop the tsunami of nasty messages from people I barely even remembered. That night, I opened my banking app and stared at the screen for a long time. $5,000 a month. $60,000 a year. Money they barely acknowledged. Money they thought was owed to them. With one click, I cancelled the transfer. Then I sent Mom a message, short, cold, final, payments have stopped. Please don't contact me again. And then I blocked her. Blocked Dad, blocked Emily, blocked every flying monkey cousin and nosy neighbour who thought they had a right to weigh in. The silence after that? It felt like standing outside after a storm. Wreckage everywhere, but also air you could actually breathe. Of course, they didn't take it well. The next week, they showed up at my building. Literally. Mom, Dad, and Emily tried to push past security, demanding to see me, saying they weren't leaving until Rachel came down and did the right thing. The concierge called me. "Want me to call the cops?" he asked, almost bored. "No need," I said. "Just don't let them up." So he didn't. He even emailed me the security footage later. I watched it once. Mum screaming, Dad pacing, Emily crying fake tears into a Starbucks cup, and me sitting on my couch in a cozy sweater, sipping tea, watching the markets open in Tokyo. It was over. But the real shift? It didn't come from blocking numbers or building security. It came from inside me. One night, maybe 2 weeks after the Thanksgiving disaster, I sat on my balcony looking out over the city. Lights blinking, cars moving like tiny dots, a whole world spinning without my drama in it. And it hit me I wasn't angry anymore. Not really, I was sad, yeah. Sad for the little girl who thought she could earn love with trophies and straight A's. Sad for the teenager who waited for applause that never came, but not angry, because I finally got it. Their failure to love me the way I deserved, that wasn't my fault. It was never my fault. A few months later, I started looking at houses, not in the city, somewhere quieter, greener, a place with enough room for a big garden and maybe a dog someday, a fresh start. Some people call it running away. I call it building a life they don't get to touch. And yeah, maybe sometimes at night, when the wind blows a certain way, I think about them. I wonder if they ever regret it, if they miss me, or if they just miss my money. Either way doesn't matter, because for the first time in my life, I'm not living for their approval, not chasing crumbs. I'm building my own damn table. And it's big enough to invite people who actually deserve a seat.